I'm Chloe Lee, 30, and I worked my way from temp gigs to COO of a multi-division firm. For years, I supported my younger sister, helped her with rent, coached her through interviews, even gave her leads I wanted for myself. But when she stole the job I spent months preparing for, by pretending my interview was canceled, I made a choice that changed everything. Ever been betrayed by someone you gave everything to? Drop your story in the comments, you're not alone. Before we dive in, tell me where you're watching from. And if you've ever had to reclaim your power after being blindsided, hit like and subscribe for more real stories about betrayal, boundaries, and bouncing back. What happened next, you won't believe. We grew up in a small town where everyone knew each other's business. Our house was the yellow one at the end of a cul-de-sac, with a lopsided mailbox and a driveway that cracked every winter. My sister, Marissa, was born 2 years after me, but she never acted like the younger one. She was loud, charming, impulsive. People remembered her. Teachers, neighbors, even kids we barely talked to. If there was a talent show, she was in it. If there was a birthday party, she somehow ended up at the center of every group photo. I was quieter, not shy, just comfortable on the sidelines. I read a lot. I liked routines. I did my homework on time and remembered when our mom's insurance needed renewing. Marissa would forget her lunch 3 days a week and still come home with half the school rooting for her in the student council race. It wasn't that she was manipulative back then. She was just magnetic, and I got used to orbiting her. Our parents worked long hours. Mom was a nurse, Dad did plumbing jobs across the county. A lot of our afternoons were just the two of us. I think that's why I got used to helping her, making sure she didn't miss the bus, sneaking her my saved-up allowance when she lost hers, covering for her when she forgot to do her chores. It didn't feel like sacrifice. It just felt like being a sister. We fought like siblings do, but it never lasted. I'd walk past her room an hour later and see her curled up with my favorite sweatshirt, acting like nothing happened. I didn't always love how one-sided things were, but she was my sister. I figured that counted for something. In high school, she started pulling away a bit. She got into theater, then student government, then yearbook. I stuck to debate and AP classes. Our circles split. But at home, it was the same. She'd leave a mess in the kitchen, and I'd clean it. She'd ask for help cramming for a test the night before, and I'd quiz her. It became a pattern. She moved fast and burned bright, and I stayed close enough to make sure nothing blew up. After I graduated, I went straight into undergrad at a local college. I didn't have the money or the confidence to move far. I worked 2 part-time jobs and commuted. I majored in business strategy, thinking I'd do something practical. Marissa, meanwhile, applied to a dozen schools out of state. She ended up going to one on the East Coast, said she needed to get out of our small pond. She visited on breaks and made it sound like she was reinventing herself. She talked faster, wore sleeker clothes, started calling me girl instead of my name. I remember her saying once, "I could never do what you do. All that structure, all those spreadsheets, I'd lose my mind." She laughed, and I did too, but later, I wondered why it felt like an insult. Still, I kept showing up. When she needed help with her internship applications, I walked her through her resume. When she freaked out about a group project, I helped write her presentation outline. I even mailed her a blazer she'd left at home because she said it made her feel CEO-ish. She never sent it back. When she graduated, she decided to move to the city, said she'd make it work somehow. I was already there by then, working contract roles while finishing my master's part-time. She stayed on my couch for 6 weeks while she job hunted. I didn't mind. I made space for her things, let her take over half the fridge, even gave her a copy of my apartment key. She called me her urban survival guide. I laughed. I always laughed. One night, she cried on the floor of my kitchen because she didn't get a second interview for some media startup. I told her not to worry. I pulled up a list of companies hiring, made a spreadsheet, and highlighted the ones I thought fit her skill set. We stayed up until 2 in the morning editing cover letters. She got hired 2 weeks later by a trendy branding agency. It was part-time, but she posted about it like she'd landed an executive role. She moved out shortly after that into a studio with 3 other girls. I didn't hear from her much after that unless she needed something, a reference, a review, a ride. Still, I kept rooting for her. I figured she'd find her way, maybe hit some walls but bounce back better. That was her thing. She stumbled, then turned it into a story. I just never thought she'd turn one of those stories into a lie that pushed me out of my own future. There was one weekend, maybe a year later, when she called and asked if I wanted to grab coffee. I remember thinking it was strange. She never reached out just to catch up. But I said yes. We met at a place near her office. She showed up late, ordered a drink I'd never heard of, and spent most of the conversation talking about her new coworkers. She used words like synergy and cross-functional like she just discovered them. At one point, I mentioned I was prepping for a big interview. It was a startup I'd been following for over a year, lean team, strong leadership, solid growth. I'd made it to the final round, and I was nervous but excited. I told her I felt like this was the first role that really fit. She smiled and said, "That's great, you've been grinding forever. You deserve something good." I remember that sentence because it was the last time she ever sounded supportive. Looking back, it might have already been an act. What I didn't know then was that she'd go home from that coffee, look up the company, and decide she wanted the job too. What I didn't know was that she'd find a way in and make sure I stayed out. I'd spent years building her up, thinking we were both trying to climb, but only one of us wanted us both to succeed. I didn't see it coming because I didn't want to. I thought being family meant something. I thought being loyal counted. But not everyone keeps score the same way. Some people don't see support, they see a stepping stone. And I guess, for Marissa, I'd been one for a long time. It wasn't sudden, not really. People like to say that about change, but it never actually happens overnight. Looking back, the shift with Marissa had been creeping in for a while. It just took me longer than I'd like to admit to recognize it. At first, it was subtle. A missed text here, a vague, "I'll get back to you" there. I'd send her job openings I came across, ones I thought matched her background or interests, and she'd reply with a thumbs up or a one-word "thanks." Then nothing. I assumed she was just busy. Everyone gets overwhelmed sometimes, especially when you're juggling rent and figuring out adulthood. But then she started making comments, little things that didn't land right. We were grabbing dinner one night, her choice, obviously, and she spent half the meal talking about a new friend group she'd found. They were all in early-stage startups, mostly under 30, and full of ideas they swore were going to disrupt everything. She mentioned a girl named Lexi who just launched her third e-commerce brand by 24, and a guy named Jalen who literally does 0 meetings and still makes 6 figures a month. She looked at me between bites of salad and said, "You should meet them. They'd love your whole, organized energy." I smiled, but inside I felt something shift. Organized energy sounded like a euphemism for boring. She kept talking. They're super into biohacking and time blocking, and figuring out how to monetize their hobbies. You'd be a fun project for them. A project? I let that one slide too. At the time, I chalked it up to her trying to include me in her world. I didn't realize she didn't think I belonged in it. After that, the distance grew faster. Her texts got shorter. Her calls, when they happened, were rushed. Just heading into something, or can't talk, super slammed today. But she had time to post. Her social media lit up with pictures from rooftop happy hours and blurry selfies tagged with tech bros I'd seen on panels. Her captions were all variations of "don't chase," "attract," and "cutting out what no longer serves." She never said anything directly to me, but it didn't have to be direct. One morning, I noticed she'd unfollowed our cousin Lily. They used to be close. I asked if something happened, and she shrugged. "She's just kind of stuck, you know? Same job, same place. I'm trying to be more intentional about who I surround myself with." I didn't say anything, but I remember thinking, is that how she sees me too? Same job, same place. Stuck. Around that time, I noticed she stopped asking about what I was working on. I'd try to tell her about a new project I was leading or a company I was helping restructure, and she'd nod, then pivot the conversation to some drama at her office. She acted like I was the one wasting my potential. Like her startup job, repackaging old ideas with slick branding, was somehow more real than anything I was building behind the scenes. She also started dressing differently. Flashier. She leaned into this curated aesthetic, blazers that never looked worn, sneakers that cost more than my monthly utilities. At one point, she posted a picture wearing the blazer I'd loaned her months before. She tagged it #PowerMoves. That was the last I saw of it. When I asked if she still had it, she said, "Oh, I think I left it at Lexi's. Or maybe it's in storage, not sure." No apology. just a smile and a wave of her hand like it didn't matter. It mattered to me. There was also the time she borrowed my laptop because hers was doing something weird. I didn't think twice about it. She used it in my living room while I made us dinner. Later that night, I noticed my desktop was cleared. My folders had been moved, some were renamed. When I asked, she said, "Oh, sorry, I just needed to look at your portfolio setup. I was showing Lexi how you structured it. She's building one and needed inspo." I didn't argue, but I changed my passwords that night. Things came to a head one afternoon when I was prepping for a presentation. I had a final interview for a strategic lead position, and I needed someone to run through my slides with me. I called Marissa. She picked up, but she was already mid-conversation with someone else. I heard laughter in the background, then her voice, "Can I call you back? I'm literally pitching a brand right now." She never called back. I ended up practicing alone, talking to the mirror in my hallway. I got through the interview, but I didn't get the job. The feedback was vague. Overqualified but not the right culture fit. I remember sitting on my couch that night, staring at Marissa's latest Instagram story, some networking event with champagne and low lighting, and wondering if she would have cared. I tried to bring it up a few days later. I said I felt like we weren't as close, that I missed the way we used to talk. She just said, "Well, we're both busy. I mean, you're doing your spreadsheet thing and I'm trying to scale something meaningful. Different paths, right?" Different paths. It wasn't what she said. It was how easily she said it, like she'd already done the math and decided I didn't add up anymore. That's when I started pulling back too. I stopped volunteering information. I stopped offering help. I didn't call to check on her job stress or help rework her resume when she griped about her manager. And when I got that email, a final round interview at a tech company I'd followed since their Series A, I didn't tell her right away. Not because I didn't trust her. Not yet. But because, for the first time in a long time, I wanted something that was just mine. I still told her eventually. We were getting coffee again, another last-minute invitation from her. She seemed distracted, flipping through messages between bites of an overpriced croissant. I mentioned the interview casually, not expecting much. She perked up. "Wait, they're still hiring. I thought they closed that role already." "Nope," I said. "Final rounds next week." She smiled, but her eyes flicked away too quickly. "That's awesome. You crush it there." I nodded, but something about the moment stuck with me. I couldn't name it yet, but it felt off. 2 days later, she texted me, said she'd heard through a friend that the company might be restructuring, that the role might get cut. "Might be worth checking before you go all in," she said. "Would suck to waste the prep." I told her I'd already confirmed the interview. She left me on read. The next morning, she called, said she'd heard from a recruiter that the interview had been canceled. Internal decision. She sounded concerned. I believed her. And that's how it started. That was the last warning I got. The next time I heard about that company, it was through her. A post, a photo, a caption that read, "So excited for this next chapter." It was the company, it was the job, it was mine, or it was supposed to be. The job wasn't just a job to me. It was the one I'd been aiming for since grad school. I found the company during their first funding round. Back then, they were a team of 8 people working out of a warehouse in Brooklyn. I followed their progress for years, watched their leadership interviews, read every article that mentioned them. They were lean, efficient, principled. They'd carved out a place in an oversaturated industry by doing things differently, and I wanted in. When they finally posted a role that aligned with my background, operations strategy lead, I didn't hesitate. I built a custom pitch deck to go with my application, not because they asked for one, but because I wanted them to know I understood their mission. I made it past the recruiter round, then the hiring manager. The final step was a panel interview with the executive team, scheduled for the following Monday. I'd cleared my calendar. I'd prepared every possible question they might throw at me. I was ready. That Friday, Marissa called me. She sounded casual, like she was just checking in, but I could tell there was something rehearsed about her tone. She said she'd heard from someone in her circle that the company was undergoing major internal changes. She dropped a few names, people I didn't know but supposedly she did, and said the hiring process might be on hold. I asked how certain she was. She said, "Pretty sure. Just trying to save you time, you know." I remember standing in my kitchen, holding the phone with one hand, staring at my open laptop. My slides were up on the screen, notes in the margins, timers set on my calendar. "You think I should still go?" I asked her. She hesitated. "I mean, if it were me, I'd wait. Worst case, you show up and it's awkward. But yeah, I'd check first." I thanked her, hung up. That night, I emailed the recruiter to confirm everything was still scheduled. No reply. Monday morning, I didn't go. I didn't want to be the candidate who showed up uninvited to a meeting that might not exist. I stayed home, tried to shake the feeling of uncertainty, told myself it would be rescheduled. But that afternoon, I got the email. "Thank you for your interest in the operations strategy lead role. At this time, we have filled the position." No explanation, no update, no chance to clarify. I sat there for a long time. I didn't even forward the email to anyone. I just stared at it. Then I closed my laptop and went for a walk, trying not to make it mean more than it did. Maybe they'd filled it internally. Maybe they'd hired someone from a referral pipeline. That happens all the time. I didn't think of Marissa. Not at first. It took 2 weeks. I was scrolling through LinkedIn, half-heartedly looking for new roles. I saw a post from someone at the company celebrating a new hire. I clicked on it. It led to a chain of welcome posts. Then I saw hers. Marissa. Her face was in the header, smiling, professional, carefully styled. The caption, "Thrilled to start my new journey as operations lead at." I didn't move. My eyes scanned it 3 times to make sure I wasn't misreading. Operations lead. Not assistant, not support lead. I refreshed the page, thinking it had to be a mistake. It was. I opened my email again, looked at the rejection notice. Same company, same role. I even opened the original calendar invite for the interview I never went to. She hadn't just gotten a job there. She'd taken my job, the one I prepared for, the one I was in final rounds for, the one I'd told her about down to the time and date. I didn't confront her right away. I wanted to be sure. I pulled up the company page, checked the team directory. There she was, same title, reporting directly to the VP I was supposed to meet with. I sat with it for hours. Eventually, I called her. She picked up on the second ring chipper. "Hey, what's up?" I didn't lead with it. I asked how she was doing. She said she'd been busy, that work was super intense but exciting. I asked what company she was at now. She hesitated for a beat, then said the name. I waited. "I didn't know you were looking there," she said. "You did?" I asked. "I mean, I knew you mentioned something about them, but I didn't realize it was the same role." There was a silence. "I got an email saying the interview was canceled," I said. "Oh, weird, maybe there was a mix-up. I came across the posting through someone in my Slack group, sent in a cold pitch. Guess they liked me." She said it like it was no big deal, like she hadn't just walked through a door she watched me build. I didn't yell, I didn't accuse. I ended the call a minute later, told her I had something to finish up. Then I sat down and tried to remember every word I'd said to her, every slide I'd shown her when I was prepping, every tip she might have picked up from our conversations. I had no proof she used any of it, but I didn't need proof. I knew her. I didn't tell anyone what happened for a while, not because I was embarrassed. I just didn't want to hear the inevitable advice, "You should have never trusted her," or "cut her off," or "you're better off without that company." I wanted to grieve it quietly. Not the job, though that hurt, but the clarity. The moment everything came into focus. The years of giving, helping, supporting, all leading to this. She'd seen something I built and decided she wanted it, so she took it. I think that's the part that stayed with me the longest. Not the betrayal, but how easily she justified it. Like it was just business. Like I was just competition. I didn't block her, I didn't confront her again, I didn't make a scene. Instead, I opened my laptop and started looking for what came next. And this time, I didn't tell her anything. I didn't tell anyone what she'd done, not right away. There didn't seem to be a point. If I told our parents, they'd ask if I was sure. If I told friends, they'd ask if maybe it was a coincidence. And even if they believed me, what would they say? That I should have seen it coming. I didn't need confirmation, I just needed space. A few days after I saw her LinkedIn post, I reached out to someone I used to work with. a recruiter I'd partnered with when I was doing freelance hiring support. I didn't give many details, just said I was curious about how certain application overlaps were handled. He asked a few questions. I gave him just enough to understand. He paused, then said, "Actually, yeah, there was a situation like that recently. A candidate showed up without a formal invite, said she was filling in for her sister who had a scheduling issue, then clarified it was a misunderstanding and pitched herself anyway. The team thought it was weird, but she was confident. They let her present." He didn't say her name, he didn't need to. I thanked him, hung up, sat at my desk for a long time after that. I wasn't shocked. I already knew what happened. But hearing it out loud, knowing she'd pretended to be me, walked into that building with my name on her lips, and then twisted it into a mix-up, that hit differently. She hadn't just taken the opportunity. She made me disappear. For a few days, I walked around with a kind of dull static in my chest. I still showed up to work, still returned emails, still ate lunch at my desk like always, but something was gone, not just trust, something deeper. Like I'd been holding a blueprint of how things should go and suddenly realized it had been written in pencil the whole time. I started deleting old photos from my phone, not in a rage, just quietly. The birthday dinner where she brought 3 friends and made me split the check. The blurry beach selfie where I was holding her shoes while she posed. The Christmas morning where she unwrapped a gift I picked out, then asked, "Do you still have the receipt?" There were so many of them. That week she texted me, a picture of her new work badge. "First day vibes," it said with a winking emoji. I didn't respond. Then she followed up with, "Let's get drinks soon, on me this time lol." Still, I said nothing. The silence was intentional, not to punish her. I just didn't have anything left to give. In the past, I might have responded with a neutral line, might have pretended nothing happened, smiled through it, tried to keep the peace. That's what I'd done for years. But something about this shifted the ground under me. I couldn't keep being the one who made things easier. I didn't tell her I knew. I figured she'd figure it out eventually. Or maybe not. Maybe she'd just assume I was being cold or jealous or overworked. That was her pattern, rewrite reality until it favored her version of events. Instead, I went quiet. I started saying no, not just to her, to everything that drained me, every obligation I'd taken on out of guilt, every coffee I scheduled with people who only showed up when they needed something, every project I said yes to just to be seen as helpful. I cleared it all out. That was the beginning of a new phase for me. I didn't know what it would lead to, but I knew I was done shrinking. I threw myself into work, real work, not just making other people look good. I took on a private contract that let me build something from scratch, a systems overhaul for a boutique logistics firm that was bleeding money and didn't know why. It wasn't glamorous, but it was real. I liked that. I liked that no one there had heard of my sister, or cared about titles, or posted motivational quotes instead of actually delivering results. At night, I worked on my own projects, restructuring decks, case studies, templates for early-stage companies that didn't know how to build operations from the ground up. I started sharing quietly in industry forums, connecting with people who valued execution over aesthetics. The more I built, the less I thought about her. Not because I wasn't still angry, I was, but because it stopped being useful. At a certain point, you get tired of being hurt. You get tired of replaying the moment they chose themselves over you and trying to make it mean something. It already means something. You just have to let that be enough. I didn't unfollow her. I wanted to know what she'd do with the opportunity. I checked in once in a while. Her posts were exactly what I expected. Filtered office shots, shout-outs to her, amazing new team, articles she barely read with captions like "This hit hard." It was all surface. A month in, I noticed she'd started reposting company content, but never original updates. No big wins, no launch recaps, nothing that showed she was actually building anything. I figured she was coasting. That was her skill, really, arriving just polished enough to be impressive, then floating on the assumption she knew what she was doing. Meanwhile, I kept moving. I took on a second client, then a third. I stopped waiting for someone to open a door and started building my own. A few people reached out, former coworkers who'd noticed I was doing something different. I didn't advertise, I didn't pitch, I just said, "Here's what I can do, let me know if it's useful." Word spread faster than I expected. 6 months after she got the job, I launched my own consultancy. Just me, a website, and a network of people who trusted my work. I didn't need investors. I didn't need a launch party. I just needed focus. That was the part she never understood. The work isn't the post. It's what you do when no one's watching. It's the late nights fixing other people's mistakes, the spreadsheets that don't get likes, the strategy decks that never see the light of day but save a company from collapse. I'd spent too long trying to get people like her to see that. Now I didn't need them to. The last time she messaged me, it was a voice note. She said she missed me, said things felt weird, said she hoped I wasn't mad about anything. I listened to the whole thing, then archived it. Some bridges don't burn. Some just sink quietly when you stop walking across them. I didn't set out to build anything big. That wasn't the plan. I just wanted to be left alone to do good work in a place where no one knew my sister's name. So I moved, took a fellowship with a mid-sized firm in Denver. Strategy and process development. It wasn't glamorous, but it was stable, and it paid me to think clearly for the first time in months. That city gave me breathing room. I didn't have to keep running into people who'd ask about Marissa. I didn't have to hear second-hand updates or see her face on someone else's Instagram story. I was able to disconnect. Not just from her, but from the version of myself that had existed around her. The fellowship turned into a contract, then a full-time offer. I turned it down. By then, I had enough momentum to go out on my own. I started consulting quietly, companies that were too small to get attention from the big players, but too scrappy to be written off. Founders who were good at building products but bad at structuring teams. Operations were always the weak link. That's where I came in. Word got around. Eventually, I got pulled into a logistics startup that was 2 months from shutting down. The founder was smart but disorganized. His co-founder had already left. They had a decent product but no systems, no roadmap. It was chaos. I didn't walk in with a title. I just started fixing things. Meetings got shorter. Burn rates stabilized. Client onboarding time dropped by 60%. I brought in a few contractors I trusted, built them a proper ops deck. After 3 quarters, we turned our first profit. I didn't realize how much I needed that win until I saw the numbers. I stayed. They made me partner the following year. Not symbolic, actual equity. It was the first time in my career where I had real leverage, not just a seat at the table. When we started talks with another firm about a potential merger, I negotiated terms. Quietly. Thoroughly. No press, just strategy. The merger took time. These things always do. But when it finally closed, we became the parent company to 5 smaller orgs, each still running their own branding, their own internal culture, but under one umbrella. I built the framework for that umbrella. One of those orgs was Marissa's company. I didn't see it at first. Their name wasn't in the initial list. They were a recent acquisition of one of the firms we absorbed. A rebrand had buried the old title. But when I saw the org chart during onboarding, I recognized it immediately. I knew their product, their client list, their numbers. I knew the VP's name. He was the same one who'd interviewed me years ago. I clicked through the HR portal, found the team list. There she was. Marissa, Senior Ops Manager. She'd been promoted once, maybe twice, still mid-tier, not leading anything critical, no direct reports. I stared at her profile for a long time. She looked the same photo from 3 jobs ago, same slightly exaggerated title. I wondered if she even knew her company had been acquired. Probably not. These kinds of transitions were quiet by design. No one wanted panic or mass exits. She was still posting on socials, team building exercises, brunches, screenshots of anonymous feedback surveys with hearts drawn around the praise. I didn't follow her, but her account was public. One post was captioned, "Sometimes the detour is the path." I guess that's what she called it now. I didn't reach out. I didn't need to. She wasn't important enough to derail anything. Not anymore. And I didn't feel the need to announce who I was or what I owned. I just made sure my name stayed out of the merger documentation. No press releases, no public statements, all internal. There was one moment, though. During a leadership sync for the newly absorbed teams, I reviewed a list of departments flagged for restructuring. One of them was hers. Her name was at the top of the list, not for termination, but for reassignment. A cost-saving measure. Her department was over-resourced, underperforming. A few roles would be moved to other divisions, others dissolved. Hers was marked for evaluation. I didn't make the final call. I passed the file to the integration team like I would for anyone else. No edits, no notes. I wasn't there to micromanage revenge. I was building a company. Still, there was a moment, late one night, going through budget reports, when I hovered over her name and thought about that interview. About the cold email from HR. About how she'd smiled on the phone and pretended it was all a coincidence. She thought she won something that day, but what she took was a title, a job I would have outgrown in a year. What she missed was the long game. That was always the difference between us. She chased status, I built infrastructure. After the merger, I kept my head down, focused on integration. Systems, not people. I still hadn't spoken to her. I figured if she found out, it wouldn't be from me. Maybe she'd hear it in a meeting, see my name on an internal email, or maybe not. I wasn't looking to make a point. I just didn't need to hide anymore. A few weeks later, I got an email. Subject line, Leadership Roundtable Invite. It was from the internal communications team. A quarterly sync with team leads across divisions. Nothing unusual. I scanned the attendee list. Her name was there. I joined late, turned my camera off. I didn't speak, just listened. She did talk, though, gave a quick update on a project, mentioned a delay. Her voice was familiar but distant, like hearing a song you used to love playing in someone else's car. No one reacted, no one challenged her. The meeting moved on. I closed the tab. That was it. That was the moment I realized I didn't need her to know. I didn't need a confrontation. I didn't need a scene. I didn't need her to look me in the eye and apologize or explain or admit anything. What I needed was already happening. Every day she walked into a job she thought she earned without knowing who signed off on her payroll. That was enough. I wasn't angry anymore. I was focused. Focused on what came next. Focused on the next company we were evaluating. Focused on the young analyst I was mentoring who reminded me of myself 10 years ago, quiet, capable, underestimated. Marissa was still trying to climb a ladder she didn't realize I now owned. Let her. I didn't check in on her constantly. Just often enough to know the story she was telling didn't match what was actually happening. Publicly, she still looked polished. Her posts were upbeat, curated, panels she attended, webinars she was honored to speak on, inspirational quotes over filtered photos of open laptops and lattes. Her captions had a tone I recognized. The same tone she used when we were kids and she got caught doing something wrong, overcompensating with enthusiasm to keep people from looking too closely. But behind the scenes, things weren't holding up. The first internal report came in a few months after the merger. It wasn't specific to her, just a team-wide performance review. One of the divisions was underperforming across 3 quarters, deliverables missed, cross-functional friction, slower than average cycle times. Her department, she wasn't leading the division, not officially, but she had her hands in it. I read through the notes. There were repeated mentions of unclear delegation, bottlenecks around team communication. A few flagged comments from skip-level feedback, lack of clarity on direction, delays due to waiting on Marissa's sign-off, inconsistent priorities. It wasn't disastrous. Not yet, but it was the kind of slow unraveling that doesn't make noise until it's too late. I didn't intervene. I wasn't her manager. I didn't want to be, but I watched. Over the next 2 quarters, the feedback sharpened. Her manager flagged interpersonal challenges. The phrase HR uses when they don't want to say someone's difficult, but people are starting to complain. She declashed with 2 team leads during a launch sprint. One of them left. The other requested a transfer. There were whispers about her taking credit for things she didn't own, presenting other people's work without looping them in. Nothing formally documented, just tension in the notes, disengagement, increased attrition, low morale. I could picture it. She was still the same Marissa, great in the meeting, confident in front of leadership, but the execution was thin. She overpromised, underplanned. She wasn't malicious, just careless. That worked fine when someone else was cleaning up after her. But she didn't have someone like that anymore. The difference was visible now. When we were younger, I'd cover the gaps, smooth things over, fix the drafts, revise the numbers. It was invisible labor, and she relied on it more than she realized. Without that buffer, her work showed its edges. Pretty on the outside, but shallow where it counted. Her team went through 3 new hires in one cycle. HR flagged it. High turnover. Misaligned expectations. One of the exit interviews mentioned a chaotic work culture and unclear leadership structure. Still, nothing dramatic happened. Not yet. These things took time. The company had been running a quiet audit of all inherited divisions. Standard integration protocol, efficiency reviews, headcount justifications, budget reallocations. I led one of the review tracks, non-client-facing operations, support functions, internal comms. Marissa's department fell under mine. I didn't recuse myself. There was no need. I wasn't doing anything unusual. I followed the process, ran the numbers, compared metrics across teams. But when her file landed in front of me, when I saw her name at the top of a report marked Restructure Priority, I did pause. It was just for a moment. I read through her profile, title, tenure, compensation band. I checked the performance reviews, skimmed the 360 feedback. I didn't edit anything. Didn't change any scores. I didn't need to. It was all there already. Her manager had marked her as valuable with development areas. A polite way of saying she wasn't meeting expectations but was still politically useful. I knew that game. I'd played it once on the other side. Her most recent self-assessment had a line I couldn't ignore. I've stepped into more of a strategic leadership role this year, often bridging gaps across teams when clarity is lacking. I closed the tab. It was strange, reading her words like that. Detached from voice, stripped of tone, she still believed she was the solution, that she was holding things together, but the numbers said otherwise. I highlighted her row in yellow, the standard flag for needs additional review. The final decision would go to her direct org lead, not me, but my notes would be part of the file, and I wasn't going to sugarcoat them. She wasn't getting fired. Not yet, but her position was on the list for potential elimination. If they restructured the department, her role would be one of the first to go, either absorbed into another team or cut entirely. I didn't feel triumphant, just tired. There's this idea people have about revenge that it's loud, explosive, that there's a scene, a confrontation, some moment of public reckoning. But the truth is, most consequences come quietly. A line on a spreadsheet, a flagged review, a decision made in a closed meeting where no one speaks her name out loud. She wouldn't know it was me. She'd never hear that I'd read her file. She wouldn't realize the person reviewing her quarterly outcomes had once watched her pretend to be someone else in an interview room. That was fine. I didn't want her to know. I wanted her to feel it. Not all at once, not in some dramatic fall from grace, but gradually, a shift in how people treated her, less deference, more questions, a hesitance in their emails, a delay in getting approvals, projects reassigned, opportunities that used to land in her inbox now going to someone else. I wanted her to wonder if maybe she wasn't as irreplaceable as she thought. That's how transformation works, not just for her but for me. Because I'd spent years measuring my worth by how useful I could be to other people, how much I could carry without complaint. And now, I was sitting in a position where I didn't need anyone's permission to make decisions that mattered. I didn't take her down, I just stopped lifting her up. The rest took care of itself. She hasn't called, not in any meaningful way. There've been a few messages here and there, nothing direct, nothing specific. "Hope you're doing amazing," was the last one. Before that it was, "We should catch up soon, it's been forever," with no date, no question mark, just a vague prompt for me to do the work of responding. I didn't. She still didn't know what I did. Not really. I'm sure by now she had some idea. The merger wasn't a secret anymore. My name had started appearing in internal communications, updates from the parent company, quarterly leadership notes, restructuring memos, but she never brought it up. Maybe she didn't see them. Maybe she did and decided to pretend she didn't. The truth was, I thought about reaching out. During the transition, when her team was flagged for cuts, I thought about calling her. Not to warn her, just to give her a chance to step forward. To say something real before the next phase started. I sat with the idea for a couple of days. Wrote and deleted a draft email more than once. But it didn't feel honest. It felt like I'd be giving her another opening to sidestep what happened. So I didn't send anything. I didn't go out of my way to shield her, but I didn't go out of my way to make things harder either. I made sure every severance package was fair. Her department wasn't the only one affected. The restructure hit 4 teams, nearly 24 roles. We offered soft landings where we could, placement services, extended benefits, recommendations for those who earned them. She wasn't singled out, but she wasn't protected either. Her name was on the confirmed list when it came back from final approvals, one of 7 roles marked non-essential to future state org. That's how they phrased it, non-essential. I read the line 3 times. Her last day came and went. No posts, no farewell message, not even a vague reference to new beginnings or taking time to reflect. She just went quiet. A week later, she updated her LinkedIn. Exploring new opportunities, it said, open to fractional leadership roles. Still no mention of where she'd been, no explanation, just a clean, curated pause in the timeline. She sent me another message that same day. We should do coffee soon, it said. No context. No reference to the fact that I now held the job she once thought she took from me, or that the place she worked for was one I owned a piece of. I didn't answer. Not because I was angry, that part had faded, but because I knew what that message was. A hand reaching out, not to apologize, but to reattach, to reset the board without acknowledging the last game. That's the thing people don't understand about trust. It's not just about what you say after the damage is done. It's about whether you're willing to sit with the discomfort of your choices, whether you're willing to name what you broke. She hadn't, so I didn't reply. But I didn't block her either. I left the message unread. Not as punishment, just as a line she could cross if she ever wanted to say something real. There were moments when I imagined how that conversation might go, if she called and actually owned it. If she said, I took something that wasn't mine, or I thought I needed to win even if it meant stepping on you to do it. Would I listen? Probably. Would I forgive her? I don't know. I'm not sure forgiveness looks like going back to how things were. Maybe it just means letting go of the hope that they'll ever understand. I don't hate her. I never did. That's what makes it harder to explain. I think she believed what she did was just ambition, that I was collateral, not a casualty, that the opportunity would have disappeared if she hadn't stepped in. Maybe that's how she sleeps at night. But ambition without ethics is just theft in a better outfit. The last time I saw her name was on a referral request. Someone from a partner firm had worked with her briefly and reached out for feedback, said they were considering her for a short-term contract. I responded with facts, dates, deliverables, project context. Nothing more. She got the contract. I saw the announcement in a newsletter a month later. A small team, a small title, a place to land. I didn't resent that. Everyone deserves a chance to grow, even her. But I haven't forgotten. And I'm not reaching across that line again. If she wants to talk, really talk, I'll listen. I'll meet her where she is, but it's not on me to do the reaching. Not anymore. She burned that bridge. And I finally stopped trying to swim across it. It's been 5 years since that job interview. The one she told me was canceled. The one she walked into, wearing my name like a borrowed coat. 5 years since the last version of our relationship collapsed under its own weight. I'm not angry anymore. I'm clear. I say that now without needing to explain it. I don't walk around with rehearsed speeches in my head or imaginary confrontations. I don't flinch when her name comes up in conversation. It just passes through me, the way names do when they don't mean the same thing anymore. I'm the COO of the parent company now. The title still surprises me sometimes, not because I don't think I earned it, but because I remember what it felt like to be in rooms where people assumed I didn't belong. I still keep my calendar clean. I still do my own slide decks. I don't need anyone to curate my voice for me. I know what I sound like. We're doing well. The company is healthy, leaner, stronger. The merger settled into something stable. We absorbed what worked, restructured what didn't. We lost a few people. We found better ones. And the teams that remain actually talk to each other now. It's not perfect, but it's functional. That counts for a lot in this industry. Most days are full: meetings, planning, budget reviews, conflict resolution. But I carve out time for other things. I mentor young women breaking into operations and strategic development. The quiet ones. The capable ones who get overlooked because they don't sell themselves like a brand. I know their type because I was one of them. I teach them what I wish someone had told me sooner: that consistency is louder than charisma when you give it time to work. They're the best part of my week. I've stopped trying to be everywhere, do everything. I learned that lesson the hard way. I take weekends now. I travel. I don't feel the need to prove I belong in the room, I just take my seat. Marissa and I haven't spoken in over a year. She landed at another startup after the restructure. Smaller title, lateral move, the kind of company that talks about disrupting industries they barely understand. I still see her name sometimes. She's not completely out of the industry, just orbiting the edges. She shows up in newsletters, panel invites, podcasts with titles like The Future of Female Leadership. She still posts quotes about resilience, hashtags about empowerment, photos from rooftop events, and filtered headshots with captions like "just a girl with a vision." That used to sting, but now it just feels far away, like watching someone play a role they haven't outgrown. Sometimes people ask if we're close. If they know the story, they ask what I'd do if she ever apologized. I tell them the truth. She doesn't owe me an apology anymore. Not because she didn't do something wrong, she did, but because I stopped waiting for her to say it. Forgiveness isn't about getting the words. It's about what you do when you realize they're never coming. The real closure wasn't a conversation. It was a moment 2 months ago. I was reviewing a quarterly vendor list and saw her name in a forwarded proposal. She desubmitted a pitch for a consulting project. Not to me. She didn't know I was overseeing final approvals. But there it was, her deck, her strategy, her contact info. I read it carefully. Gave it the same attention I would have given any other submission. It was fine, not bad, not exceptional, just surface-level recommendations wrapped in the right buzzwords. I marked it for decline, not because it was her, because it wasn't what we needed. And that was that. No explanation, no rejection email written with extra precision, no note saying, "I remember." Just a quiet decision. That's what justice looks like sometimes. Not a big reveal, not a perfect takedown, just a line item in a spreadsheet, a signature on a dotted line, a name that doesn't move forward. I think that's the part no one prepares you for. That closure isn't loud. It's not a confrontation. It's not winning some imaginary game. It's waking up one day and realizing you no longer build your choices around someone who once betrayed you. I still think about who I was before all this, how much I gave away trying to be understood, how long I tolerated things I would never allow now, but I don't regret it. That version of me got me here. She's not someone I want to go back to, but she's someone I thank. Because of her, I learned how to stop asking for permission, how to build something quietly without applause, how to sit in the back of the room and still be the one making the final call. I don't know what Marissa thinks of me now. Maybe she's moved on. Maybe she still believes her version of things. Maybe she tells the story differently, says the job fell in her lap, says I was never really interested. That's fine. She can have whatever version she needs to sleep at night. But I know what happened. I know who I became because of it. And I know that if I saw her tomorrow, on the street, at an event, across a room, I wouldn't look away. I'd nod, maybe even smile. Not to reopen anything. Just to say, I'm still here. And I never needed to disappear to make room for her. Thanks for sticking with me through the end. If you've ever had to walk away from someone you once trusted, or watched karma do its quiet work, let me know in the comments. Have you ever helped someone who turned around and took from you? Would you forgive them, or move on without looking back? If this story hit close to home, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. More real stories are coming, about betrayal, resilience, and finding your power. See you in the next one.